Bryan Fulford. A.D. Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN SportsWrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN SportsWrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
A gentleman wanted to do the Black College Sports Network in partnership with the HBCUs.
Welcome back to the BCSN SportsWrap. Bryan Fulford and A.D. Drew here, and we are getting ready to move into the segment where we talk about our HBCU women and men players of the week, HBCU basketball women and men players of the week, as well as just a few thoughts regarding some of the teams from the past week. So Drew, let's start first off a bit of an announcement regarding a change that we have made in regards to our polls, specifically as a result of the news that we talked about earlier with the SIAC and the CIAA. So I'll let you explain that.
Well, with the basically 80 to 90% of our Division II teams not playing currently, that either being through the season being canceled or delayed, as in the case with the SIAC, we have made the decision at the Black College Sports Network to take our polls to 2 polls instead of 3 polls. And instead of breaking them down Division I, Division II, and NAIA, we will now go large school, small school, with all of the Division I teams, the MEAC schools, the SWAC schools, Hampton and Tennessee State being eligible for the large school poll, and everyone else being in the small school polls that are our remaining Division II schools, Lincoln, Missouri, Bluefield State, West Virginia State, and the NAIA teams will all be combined down into 1 poll now. And that will also hold true for our Player of the Week nominations, beginning with this current ranking and Players of the Week.
And so obviously this is very similar to what we do on the football side of things, where we have a large, or what we call a D1 and an under D1 for a small school. So real similar concept, which makes sense.
Yes.
Makes sense for us to do that.
Yes.
All right. So let's go into the rankings, as this now is our third. Well, are we gonna call this our third ranking, or do we kind of
this is the second ranking, because the preseason, I don't really consider preseason a true ranking. We'll say this is our second regular season ranking.
Okay, there we go. Second regular season ranking, first in its new format.
Correct.
Okay. So for the large school, and essentially we're talking Division I, coming in at number 5, we've got Delaware State, the Hornets, currently with a record of 1-1.
And this is the women's poll. Sorry, you didn't clarify that though, Bryan.
Sorry, I thought we were talking the women's, right? So thank you for bringing it up, women's poll. Okay. And so number 5 is Delaware State. I'm going to avoid saying the records because, look, by the time maybe somebody watches this or hears this, the records may be off. But this is as of Sunday, December 20th.
Correct.
So there may be a game or two that they played in the days that we recorded this or whatever. But this is from the week of the 14th.
This is a 2-week accumulation of statistics.
Oh, okay. So this is even more complicated than I wanted to make it.
Because the polls are bi-weekly at this point. So
so the polls are bi-weekly. Everything is bi-weekly, correct?
And Players of the Week are still weekly.
Jesus. Okay. Well, I'll eventually get this, but then by the time I get it, everything will flipping change in January, I'm sure.
It will.
All right, so here we go. From 5-1, Delaware State at 5, North Carolina A&T at 4, Alabama A&M at 3, Howard University at 2, and the number 1 team currently still unbeaten, the Morgan State Bears at 3-0. And I'm not going to talk too much about Morgan because they still have us blocked on our Twitter feed for some reason. So when Morgan State unblocks us, we'll talk about Morgan State athletics. But we'll give a shout out to the women because I think we do follow the women and they follow us back on Twitter. But for some reason, the athletic department has us blocked. I don't understand that, but whatever. I'm not even going to mess with y'all. Okay. Anybody on the now, one thing that, we talked about previously as it relates to these rankings, and these are rankings, not a poll, because look, we're doing this based off a formula that AD has kind of put together.
Polls require human vote.
Right. And this is more of a ranking based on statistics. Anything in particular, like where does Morgan State fall in the big picture with, an entity like Massey? Where does Morgan State fall in the big scheme of women's college basketball?
And of course, I had the men's scale.
Hold on. I have it here, Drew. I didn't mean to stump you. I just happened.
I had the men's page because we were talking about the men's page before we started this segment, but I do have it pulled
Morgan State. Morgan State I'll go ahead and give it to you. Morgan State comes in 259th in the country
on the Massey scale.
On the Massey scale. Yeah, with a strength of schedule that is very low, 333rd, and there are 357,
355 on the men's side, 357 on the women. No, I got that backwards. 355 women, 357 men.
Right. So their rating is 259. Their power rating 286. I'm not even going to try to get into all the other stuff. What is interesting, some schools that are right around them that are rated higher than Morgan State, North Carolina A&T, who is rated higher only by about 4 spots. So I don't want to be completely misleading with that. And Howard is 230th. Here's a curious one for you, Drew. Now you maybe can explain this to me. Southern University women with an 0-6 record have a 228th rating. They have the 3rd toughest strength of schedule. And sit that far above Morgan State. And just slightly above Southern University is Texas Southern with a record of 1-1. And they have a 226 rating. So for the layperson, Drew, how would you explain what I'm seeing here in these ratings, strength of schedule, things of that nature?
Strength of schedule is based upon the records of the opponents that you have played thus far and what they have done in their games. That's basically what your strength of schedule is based upon. Your rating is a number based upon all these other factors, such as your power, your scoring, and things of that nature, that go into that rating number on the Massey scale. So it's if you're a math junkie, economist, or something along those lines, it could be intriguing. And I'm looking at the definitions in the Massey scale Rating is the overall assessment of the team's performance to this point in the season.
Okay. And one
So,
other team I should note, significantly higher than all of those teams I mentioned, Alabama A&M with a record of 1-1 and a 203 rating. So if you just went Massey ratings alone.
And let me clarify something, because when you give those numbers out, you say 200 and 203, 203rd ranked rating. But when you actually look at the numbers on the rating, just that system, the highest score that you could have is that they have currently is a 9.56, which is Stanford in the Pac-10, the Pac-12, and the lowest number is a 1.47, which tells you it's a real minute number that they have right there. And McNeese State, who just lost to not Southern, that was Prairie View A&M last week, is a 355th rated team.
Okay. So for the layperson again, who looks at our poll, and again, our top 5, Morgan State 1, Howard 2, Alabama A&M 3, North Carolina A&T 4, Delaware State 5. Explain to the Texas Southern fan that does not see Texas Southern in our top 5. Or Southern University for that fact.
Let me give you our formula.
Well, okay, and I don't want you to give the analyst. I want you to explain it for the lay person, without going into the analytic full blown metrics, because I know that's what you do and you are good at it. So yes. I'm challenging you to explain it for the lay person.
Okay.
Joe Blow fan out there who just all he does is he sees wins and losses,
and that's all they see.
And statistics, points for, points against, that kind of stuff.
The BCSN poll, real simple. It is a calculation based upon wins and losses, as you have said, Brian, your team rating, your strength of schedule, and your opponent's team rating. Your opponent's team rating is key to our formula, which means Division I wins against Division I teams are going to rate higher than a Division I team who beats a Division II or an NAIA school. You actually, in our system, you actually get penalized, win or lose, against a lower level team if you're the higher level team. And if you're the lower level team, a Division II, NAIA, and you play a Division I, you get rewarded, win or lose, for playing that higher rated team. But that also works for those NAIA teams or Division II teams that play Division III teams on their scale, on there. So the wins and losses are weighted. That's the best way that I could put it, Brian.
Okay. Wins and losses are weighted, folks. So, don't at me or the BCSN, I'm gonna tell you, don't even at Drew, just let this thing play out. It's good conversation piece, folks at Texas A&M, Texas Southern. I feel like I may have said Texas A&M earlier, but Texas Southern folks, you're going to be upset. That's understandable. You still got a good team and SWAC play is coming up. And so.
But you've only played one game also.
2 games. 2 games.
2 games. I'm sorry. You're correct.
Yeah, 2 games. Now.
And the more, as the season progresses and teams play more games, the numbers will start to balance themselves out. Yes. The more games you play, the more opportunities you have to quote unquote earn points. But your score is average based upon the number of games that you play. So if you've only played 3 games, obviously losing one of those 3 games is going to hurt you a little bit more than if you played 10 games and have lost 1 or 2 games because of that average.
Right. Well, looking just overall for the women, and I'm bouncing around between a couple of sites, so bear with me here. Mississippi Valley State had a good week last week, winning 2 games last week after starting the season with 2 losses to Murray State and University of Mississippi. They picked up a win, a 2-point win over University of Louisiana at Monroe, who also, matter of fact, lost to Grambling State's women. And then a victory over Northwestern State University by, looks like 15 points. And so unless any other games get scheduled, that will end Mississippi Valley State's non-conference schedule. And they will get ready for their January 2nd game against UAPB. You know, obviously, unless somebody schedules a game in the next day or two.
Correct.
Over in the MEAC, it is, and I'm sorry for the delay because I'm jumping from screen to screen here.
North Carolina was A&T, I believe it was, beat Elon last week, on Sunday, 80-64 in a big win for the conference. Howard defeated Richmond on Tuesday night, 65-54. That was after the polls came out, by the way. That game does not go into the polls, but still, kudos to Howard.
You're talking about now. You're on this week. See, you're
Yes.
confusing. You're confusing things here because we're still talking about last week's
The
stuff.
poll.
But you're talking about a
The
win
ranking.
by Howard this week.
Right.
Morgan State beat Navy last week, 67-63.
And a bad loss for a Division I school was Delaware State's loss to Lincoln.
Yes. Yeah, that was an interesting ball game. That happened to be Lincoln's last game of the season, and they played like it was their Super Bowl or their NCAA tournament championship game. A game in which I think they pretty much led the entire way. I mean, I'd put it like this: after watching Lincoln play Delaware, and Delaware State is a team, I believe, that's got like 9 seniors on it, 9 seniors or grad seniors on it. So a very experienced ball club, and to see what Lincoln did to them was pretty impressive.
Pretty amazing, yeah.
Yeah, that was it. Actually made me very disappointed and sad that Lincoln's season came to an end because they look like the kind of team that, well, if they were allowed to continue to play, how far could this team have gone, into Division II playoffs,
Yes. I think they would have been a very good team. They had a chip on their shoulder after being on the outside looking in last year of the Division II tournament, having lost in the CIAA tournament and then getting snubbed by the committee.
That's right.
And just to let you know how bad that loss affected Delaware State in our rankings, they just finished an eyelash ahead of Prairie View A&M. Now, Prairie View A&M did have a win on the week, beating McNeese State. Here's the asterisk to that. There are 355 teams in Division I women's basketball. McNeese State it's the 355th ranked team. That's
Prairie
why.
with the-
That's how bad that loss was to Delaware, for Delaware, because it put them just above. If Prairie View had beaten anybody else but the 355th team, they would have finished ahead of Delaware in our ranking.
Right. And Prairie View, you mentioned, what, a 95-73 win to open their season. I believe that was just last week.
Yes.
Do you run that? Do you run the rankings out to 10? I know we only really publish 5, but I'm just curious about 6 through 10. Did you list? Do you have 6 through 10, or do you just kind of, if you have?
Right in
Not,
front of me right now, I kind of have the.
Now, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't. I don't want you to guess.
I will say this: Prairie View was number 6 by an eyelash.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask where Texas Southern was, but that's okay. Okay. So Prairie View was number 6 by an eyelash. Yes. All right. Just something to think about next time. Even though we don't publish 6 through 10, if you kind of jot down 6 through 10 just for conversation, maybe we can expand it out and just
next year, bro. I get that for you next year, man.
Oh, okay. See, I was like, damn, next year, Drew. Man, okay. I forgot. Yeah. That's only another week or 2 away.
All Which is when the next ranking to come out.
Yeah, the women's small school rankings look like this. At number 5, you got Philander Smith. 4, Dillard University. 3, Xavier, Louisiana. 2, Florida Memorial, who has actually played 7 contests. Their record is 3-4. And Talladega College with a record of 3-1. Any of those teams I don't feel like any of those teams have really played any games, maybe other than Florida Memorial over the past week.
I think since the last ranking, maybe I believe Xavier played 1 game also. And that would have been at the beginning of this polling ranking period. And Florida Memorial has played, I believe, 1 game also that has counted. They've played at a couple of exhibitions. So those are pretty much the same as they were 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So let's get into
and they will be the same probably in the next one because I think Florida Memorial is the only team that has a game scheduled before our next ranking does come out.
Okay. Now for the players of the week. For the large schools, Zakiya Mahoney of Mississippi Valley State is our large school women's player of the week. She helped lead the Delta Devils to a 2-0 record last week with a pair of double-doubles. In the 2-point victory over Louisiana Monroe, she had 17 and 10, and she was a perfect 4 for 4 at the free throw line, added 2 assists, a block, and 2 steals. Then Mississippi Valley State followed that up with a victory over Northwestern State. Mahoney had 16 points, 13 rebounds with an assist and steal. Mahoney's a 5'10" junior guard from Oaktown, Oakland, California. So congratulations to Zakiya Mahoney and Mississippi Valley State going 2-0. I don't think did anybody really have a better week than Mississippi Valley State? Winning 2. I don't think anybody else won 2 last week, did they?
No. And sidebar, Brian, my favorite rapper of all time is from Oakland.
Speaking of which, did you see the verses with was it Short and E40?
I have not seen it yet.
Okay, I will forward to you because somebody sent me the full video version, and I haven't watched it either. But obviously, 2 classic rappers, and Short Dog in the House has got all kinds of some great songs. So I'm curious There was a lot of energy, I'm sure.
Yes.
On that. Yeah.
You and when we were in school, Too Short was always the speaker tester. If you couldn't play Too Short in your vehicle, your system wasn't nothing.
Real quick, pop quiz. Your favorite Too Short song?
The original, Life Is.
Too Short?
Yes, Life Is.
I recall trying to play in my high school band as a sophomore. I transitioned from trumpet to sousaphone. This was all right around the time the classic had come, and my dad used to be a trumpet and switched to sousaphone when he was in Norfolk State's band. And so after seeing FAMU in '88, I believe it was, when they came and played Jackson State, I think it was, in the '88 Circle City Classic, I switched to sousaphone. I had to switch to sousaphone. So I just remember my buddy who played percussion, E, he got me into trying to play Freaky Tales because of the bass line. And I think it's Freaky Tales. Let me see. How does the bass line go to that?
These are the tales, the freaky tales. These are the tales that I tell so well.
Bumps.
Yeah, you got it.
Well, that was it, right?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, so yeah, that was in it. So we tried to play that.
That was the bass line on Freaky Tales and Born to Mac.
Okay, so we tried to play that because he had the percussions, and I was trying to play the bass line in the stands. Now, granted, we went to a Catholic high school, and so only those who knew what we were playing in the stands during our games. Those who weren't in the know just were like, what are those guys doing up there?
The nuns didn't know.
No, I don't think like again, unless you knew, you knew. But other than that, we weren't really telling what we were trying to play up there. I don't know if I did very well playing it. I just know I gave it an effort. I gave it a shot.
There you go.
All right, let me get back on track here. Our small school player of the week comes from Lincoln, PA. Miss Brianna Brown, who helped lead the Lincoln, Pennsylvania Lions to that win, that 72-55 victory over Delaware State to wrap up their season. Brown scored 18 points, had 9 rebounds, added 2 assists in that contest. And again, that Lincoln team did a great job. Brown is a 5'9" guard forward from out of New York, a redshirt senior. One of those people, we talked about, Drew, what will be her future? I mean, hopefully she has the opportunity to come back another year because obviously she had a good, this was, I think, was going to be a good Lincoln ball club. And unfortunately, they don't have that opportunity to play in the tournament. And so it'll be interesting to see if Ms. Brown is able to come back for another season at Lincoln. All right. Anything I missed on the women's side, Drew, before we transition over to the men?
No, I believe we have hit it. Oh, just trying to see if there were any other notable performances that I wanted to bring out. Deja Rogan from Jackson State, 23-3 against Ole Miss. Mississippi, the University of Mississippi. I try not to say that other phrase too often.
I'm glad you brought that up because it made me think about. I knew I'd looked at it earlier. The statistical leaders and Rogan from Jackson State. Now they played 5 games over at Jackson State. Now, unfortunately, Jackson State is winless, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. Let me make sure, because God forbid I say that they haven't won a game. And
that's right. You get a text from Charles.
Yeah, hold on. Jackson State is 1-4. See, I mean, I almost messed up. They beat Nicholls State That's right. They beat Nicholls State 75-60. So they are one. And did they end up playing that game Sunday against University of Tennessee? It was on the schedule.
No, they did not.
That game did not happen. Okay, so
Probably good for Jackson State.
Yeah. So Jackson, but anyway, back to who we were talking about. We were talking about Rogan, Deja Rogan, averaging 19.8 a game in 5 games. But the leading scorer in just out of the SWAC. Now, she's only played 2 games, but over at Texas Southern, I want to get this name right, so I'm hoping I say this right. Ataya Bridges, averaging 25 a game in 2 games for Texas Southern. That's pretty doggone impressive.
Yeah. We did have a couple of double doubles, another double double this week also. And that would be Diana Rosenthal from Prairie View A&M with 17 and 10 and 3 versus McNeese State.
Okay. And I've got to make sure I kick over to the MEAC as well to make sure I've got the individual scoring leaders correct. From Morgan State, that would be, God Lord, names. You know, when you don't do any research or prep work, names always will catch you up. So Ms. Red, R-E-D-D, Dana, D-A-H-N-Y-E. I'm hoping I said that right, Ms. Red. Or is it Reed? I'm gonna have to do some research here. I'm just screwing all this up. But anyway, she from Morgan State.
Diane?
Huh?
Sure, that's not Diane.
Look, all right. So we're again, if Morgan State unblocks us on Twitter, maybe we can reach out to Morgan State's athletic department and kind of get the correct phonetic pronunciation of Diane or Dana. Diane, Dana, Red. Someone help us out. Send us a tweet. Let us know. She's averaging 16.3 a game in 3 contests. Anissa Rivera for North Carolina Central, averaging 16.3 as well. They have played 4 games. And Miss Red's teammate, Janiyah Henson for Morgan State. Now, she's a sophomore. She's averaging 14.8. So that's some of your top 3 scoring leaders from out of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. Okay. All right. So that wraps it up.
And for some reason, Brian, seems like more of the women's games are getting canceled or postponed this year than the men's game.
Yeah, that's an interesting, we may need to go back and look. You know, the ESPN does a really nice tracker. I kind of jump on their website every now and then to kind of look at the games that were scheduled that got canceled and postponed, you know, which is always an interesting run of games. And maybe one day we'll kind of go back and do a tally at the number of games that have and have not been canceled. jump over to the men. We got plenty of notes here on the men's side, plenty of things that we were kind of chatting about before off air. So let's get to the HBCU large school rankings. And again, as AD said, we've consolidated our rankings from 3 to 2 in lieu of the SIAC and the CIAA deciding to pull up their tent and fold it up for the year. And so it just kind of leads us to a similar poll with the few remaining D2 teams with, we combine them with the NAIA, very similar to what we do in our football poll. So our large school rankings from 5 to 1, Prairie View A&M comes in at 5.
Correction.
Oh boy, here we go.
Texas
Hold on,
Southern
I'm gonna get out the way. You since you have the accurate rankings,
yes.
You give the rankings from 5 to 1 for the men. Go.
On the large schools, Texas Southern is 5, Prairie View A&M is 4, Morgan State is 3, Norfolk State is 2, and at the time of this recording, an undefeated Alabama A&M comes in at number 1.
All right, Alabama A&M sitting with a record of 2-0. And I think, let's see, most recently they got a win this past week over University of South Alabama, a 93-90 victory after opening the season with a win at Samford. They've had a couple of games canceled on them. They had a game against Ohio State canceled. They had a game against North Alabama canceled. And I think unless something happens, Alabama A&M, their preseason or non-conference schedule is over, and they will start on January 2nd with a home game against Jackson State. Let's see, other news from the men's basketball circuit over the past week. How about Grambling? Grambling State with a 78-61 win over University of Louisiana Monroe. That completed the very rare, what I call the G sweep by the Grambling men and women over UL Monroe. So prop to the men and women of Grambling for getting what I call the G sweep. Also, Florida A&M FAMU goes 1-1 last week. First off, they pulled off a 76-70 road victory against Austin Peay of the Ohio Valley Conference. Then a 10-point loss to Georgia Tech on the road. I think that game was a little bit closer than the final score, but still a 10-point loss wasn't too bad. And actually, FAMU was scheduled to play University of Florida a day or two after Georgia Tech. But with everything that went on with the Keontae Johnson situation for University of Florida, they decided to, I think there was about 3 games that they decided to cancel or postpone. It seems like they may have basically shut down their non-conference or what was left of their non-conference season after that situation involving Keontae. Also, from the men's side of things, how about the Battle of HU? What is this called? The battle,
Real HU,
the real HU battle, or something of that nature. I feel like I'm saying that wrong. But anyway, Howard versus Hampton. This one was played at Howard's campus. The Bison, Howard, get their first win of the season with an 81-76 victory over Hampton. Howard's Khalil Robinson, 19 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds. It was good enough for the MEAC to actually award him their player of the week. We'll get to our player of the week. Just a little hint, it was not Mr. Robinson, although he had a good game, no doubt. And then also, I guess, now this wasn't part of, I don't think this was part of our last week, but speaking of Hampton, Hampton did get a win the other night against Big South Conference opponent Charleston Southern on the road. So Hampton rebounded from that loss to Howard and got themselves a win. Any other men's news and notes that you came across or that you wrote down, Drew?
I've got Tennessee State with a pair of victories. With one victory last week.
Okay.
Over a 90-68 victory over Crawley's Ridge. And
where?
Somewhere up in the mountains. And also, this is after the ranking came out, but they also have a victory over Chattanooga, 66-63.
UT Chattanooga, right?
Yes. UT Chattanooga. Try to see if there was anything else that stuck out to me as far as scores.
It's always interesting.
We already talked about the Grambling one. That's about it as far as notable victories in the on the Division I level. Now,
hold on, because I think we're well, let me see. North Carolina A&T State, I see they got a win over Greensboro College, but I think Greensboro College is a D2 school. Probably
D2 or D3. I believe they're actually a D3 school.
Okay, D3. So we're not going to talk about that. Did we mention? But we were talking about the women. Did we mention A&T State's women getting a win over Elon? I think you did.
Yes, we did. We did talk about A&T.
All right. So where? Okay, so where were you going from there?
We've talked about the notable victories, but Brian, we've got some notable scrubbings too.
Oh yeah.
Two schools in particular, one per conference.
Look, this is painful to acknowledge or talk about, but I feel like it must be talked about. We can't hide from these kind of things. It is the shame and stain of HBCU basketball that so many of our programs sit down in the basement of the rankings and ratings. That's why when you see an Alabama A&M get rated RPI #1, you scratch your head and say, what? Because we're so used to so many of our teams being on the other end. And look, we understand the economies or the economic factor in which a lot of our schools are out on the circuit collecting paychecks for the conference, or I'm sorry, for the university athletic programs. I don't know what that total dollar value is, but it's significant. And there were teams that take some significant losses. But it goes to say every game is not against a Power 5 program. And I think what the HBC, the MEAC SWAC specifically, you're never going to get out of that bottom feed or that bottom basement of the RPI, which ends up putting you into these first four contests as 15 and 16 seeds when our teams can't even beat the non-power. Well, I guess in basketball, you've got the Power 6, because you got to throw in teams like the A10 and the Big East. So whatever, the what they call the mid majors.
Yeah.
You're a mid major. You got to be able to beat other mid majors to really kind of get yourselves out of that basement. And that doesn't happen enough. It happens. No, it happens sometimes. I mean, there's been a few wins. Look, Alabama A&M has got a couple of wins this year. But it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
But Brian, here's the thing about no disrespect to Alabama A&M. When you actually look at the rating scales, those teams that Alabama A&M beat, even though they are from mid-major conference, are the bottom half of those mid-major conferences and are ranked below Alabama A&M on a national level. It looks good, but when you look into the numbers.
Okay, so see, there you go. The creative scheduling is a little deceptive, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, FAMU over Iowa State or whoever that was last year, that's a victory that makes HBCUs, look good.
So when FAMU beats Austin P of the Ohio Valley with a record of 5-3, 215th rated team, that's a good win, is it not?
Considering where FAMU is themselves rated.
Right, 253.
Right.
And that win, Drew, was a jump of 68 spots.
Right. But let's do the math, Brian. 357 teams in Division I. You still, even though it was a good win, you still beat somebody in the bottom half.
Okay, but I get what you're saying. But in the end, it all comes down to conferences versus conferences in order to get out of the basement of the conference ratings race. And so,
but the bottom of the BAC and the SWAC conference is, let's put it out there, 6 of the 10 bottom rated teams in Division I are from one of our 2 HBCU conferences, versus some of these other conferences where their bottom team is still rated 80 points ahead of our top teams.
Yeah, but okay, I get what you're saying. Our floor, our bottom is different.
Our floor we are the floor.
Right, but
the other people's floor is their floor, but they're up on the 12th floor.
But if you can get more schools winning against those bottoms of other conferences, it will help your conference's overall rating. Instead of being the 16th or 15th rated conference, you might be the 11th or 12th, which is, I think, what maybe the Big South might be.
Right.
Which, when you think about, hey, why did North Carolina A&T jump? Or why did Hampton jump? I mean, part of it had to do with, I think, getting away from being in the basement of these conference RPIs in non-football sports.
Right. But the thing is, you never want to be the number 11 seed.
Why not?
Because that's the other set of playing games. There's always 2 16 playing games.
Well, but no, that's different. Games. That's different. Those 11 seed playoff, those are for Power 5. Those are for Power 5 programs. Those are for the upper tier college basketball.
It's still an extra game, though.
Because because the 11th seed in the tournament is the last out of the power elite conferences. Whereas the mid-majors, you usually only get one in. You may get a second if they had a really, really good year.
Right.
But you're only getting one in most of the time. And that's sadly your tournament champion instead of really your regular season conference champion.
Correct.
All right, so you just teased it and you mentioned it there. 6 of the lowest rated teams in the Massey ratings are HBCUs. And we've got 3 of them from the SWAC, 3 of them from the MEAC. And so we're just going to focus in on, before we talk about the entirety of those 6, we got to talk about the last 2, because the last 2 are team 350, 357 and 356.
Yes.
Team 356 is Mississippi Valley State. No, excuse me. 356 is South Carolina State. Currently with a record of 0-10, which, by the way, Drew, that should be applauded. The fact that the one positive I do have to say is props to South Carolina State for being able to get 10 games scheduled and played. By my count, if I look at their schedule now, maybe they just wipe it off their website.
A&T, I think, is the only Division I team that has played more.
Okay, then South Carolina State.
Yeah, because A&T is 3-8, I believe.
Okay, so props to North Carolina. Yeah, so props to A&T, props to South Carolina State. So the one positive is that South Carolina State has been able to play 10 games, but it has been a tough going. They have lost by an average margin of 27 points per game. Their worst loss of the year, matter of fact, was just recently, just the other day. Matter of fact, they lost to Furman University by 66 points, 118-52, which was the second time this season they've given up over 100 points. Their closest win, though, they lost by 2 to Jacksonville University. So pretty dynamic swing from your worst, or I guess your best loss, to your worst loss, all in a matter of 8 days.
But if you think that's bad, Brian.
Huh?
I said, but if you think that's bad.
Well, yeah. Oh, well, yeah.
We've got one worse.
Yeah, this is what. Yeah. If you think that's bad, if you think what South Carolina State is doing is bad, yeah, what's happening at Mississippi Valley State is just a little bit worse. The 357th rated team, worst rated team in Division I men's college basketball, Mississippi Valley State, currently with a record of 0-8. And I guess you probably had to think that it was this bad. And I don't know if anybody has topped this margin of defeat yet, but they lost by 80 to Arkansas on opening night. First game of the season, lose by 80. And I think they ended up losing by 60 something the next game that they played, which is maybe a day or two later. But overall, Mississippi Valley State is averaging just around 40 points per game margin defeat. They are allowing 101.75 points per game. They have allowed 2 teams to score over 100, 3 teams in the 90s, 3 teams in the 80s. And their best loss was by 27 to Western Kentucky. And I don't know. I don't know if when I originally first saw that Mississippi Valley State lost to Arkansas, which was followed up by a loss to North Texas, I had put out on a couple of boards. I was like, wow, is it that bad? Is it that bad at Mississippi Valley State? I mean, it's bad, Drew. And the worst part is they play in a conference that also features Alcorn State, who has the 7th, I don't know if I say, is it 7th best or 7th worst rating? And then UAPB actually has the 10th worst rating. So if you were to go from the bottom, from 1 to 10, starting with Mississippi Valley State, it'd go Mississippi Valley State, South Carolina State at 2, the infamous Chicago State at 3. For those who know, you know who Chicago State is. Delaware State actually comes in at 4. Then you have like South Carolina Upstate. Then you have Howard at 6. That was a little surprising. Anybody heard from McCord Maker lately? Just thought I'd put that out there.
You're wrong for that.
Number 7, Alcorn State. 8 and 9, don't recall who they are off the top of my head, but then 10 comes UAPB. So that's 6 of the bottom 10. And then if we expand it out to 20, Drew, I think what we say, you come up with 2 more teams.
8 of the 20.
8 of the 20 are HBCUs.
I'm gonna bring this home, Brian.
Please do, so we can move off of it.
Let's move off of this one. I just pulled up the overall ranking, and this is combining all basketball teams on the men's side: Division I, Division II, NAIA, JUCO, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh God, don't do that.
699.
699 programs.
No, that's their ranking.
Wait a minute, what?
They're number 699.
Out of?
I know that the 357 Division I, the 305 Division II, the 240 some odd NAIAs. There are about 100 of the independent. That's the USCAA and NCCAA.
So I would estimate maybe close
about 1,000 programs total throughout the
I was
nation.
gonna go 900, but 1,000. Okay, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
699.
Wow. What do you do with that, Drew? That's tough. All right, that is
alumni. They need your donations. That's what you do with that.
Yeah. Y'all wrap your arms around those coaches and those players, man. Put them up in your holiday prayers, because
Delta Devil feed you.
Yeah, that is rough. So it'll be an interesting follow to see, as much as we highlight the positive and the good things that are happening. I don't really want to talk about those lower rated teams next year, but man, that's the stuff of and the sad part, I feel like it's probably like that every year.
Yeah. Let's get to the small schools right quick before we get to these players of the week and get out of here.
Yeah, thank you for that. Small school rankings look like this from 5 to 1. Wait a minute, am I on the men? Because this look like the women. Okay, no, men. All right, number 5, Philander Smith. Number 4, Edward Waters, who has had some nice wins lately. Shout out to our friend Joshua Jackson, who the voice and some of the broadcasts that they have done over at EWC. The guys are looking good over there. Coach Summers.
Summers, yes.
Number 3, Lincoln, Missouri. Number 2, Lincoln, PA, unbeaten. And I'm sure now, are we eventually going to move them out of the rankings?
I think we're going to let them drop out organically.
Okay.
Long as they,
Will they?
Yes, they will. As teams play more games, their number will move Lincoln out.
All right, I hope so. I don't want a team in our rankings who aren't playing. And number 1 is Talladega. So Talladega holding down the top spot on the men and women's side of our small school rankings. Correct?
Yes.
All right, let's get to our large school player of the week. And he is actually from the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, Mr. MJ Randolph of Florida A&M University. The junior guard from Pensacola, Florida, helped the Rattlers to a 1-1 record. In the win against Austin Peay, Randolph scored 27 points, 6 assists, 5 steals, as the Rattlers won that contest 76-70. And then he followed that up a few days later against Georgia Tech with 17 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. Now, Randolph was not the player of the week in the MEAC, was he, Drew?
No. Turn the AC off. Turn the AC off, Brian.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know who's doing the voting over there. Not to say that Khalil Robinson is not deserving,
20.
but
He averaged 22 points, 4 rebounds from the guard position, and 4.5 assists on the week. And let's throw in 5 steals.
it keeps with the theme of disrespect that MJ has dealt with. He did not make first team all MEAC preseason when I thought he probably was a preseason MEAC. He was second team, but anyway, so just continue with the disrespect, MEAC. I think this guy, this Mr. Randolph, young Mr. Randolph, may turn into he may make it hard for you not to vote for him as player of the year. I just got a feeling that's what it's working towards.
Do you think they're gonna pick somebody who's leaving the conference as player of the year? Don't answer that question.
Well, look, hey,
I told you don't answer that question.
Okay. All right. Moving forward then, because I want to answer it, boy. But okay, the small school player of the week comes from Lincoln, Missouri. Lincoln University, Missouri, the Blue Tigers, Cy Witt. Junior forward from Kansas City, Missouri, led the Blue Tigers to an 82-78 victory over Emporia State. Witt had a double-double for Lincoln, 19 points, 13 boards, also had a pair of assists, a block, and a couple of steals in the victory for the Blue Tigers, right? Not the Hornets, the Blue Tigers.
The Blue Tigers.
Yeah, okay.
Harris Stowers or the Hornets.
Yeah, just checking that if you saw where I just read that from. So props to Cy Witt, Lincoln, Missouri. And obviously they will still have their season as they are part, the conference name escapes me right at the moment.
MIAA.
MIAA, yes, thank you. And so congratulations to Cy Witt and MJ Randolph, our men's players of the week. Well, Drew, I think that's going to do it for this show and for our time together. Any Christmas thoughts or wishes before we sign off?
No, I just wish that 2021 is the total opposite of 2020.
Well said. Oh, well said. We'll take a complete 180 with 2021. And so my thoughts are, we may do another show before the end of the year, so I'm not going to say
best of.
Yeah, well, yeah, yes.
Not best of a year review.
Yeah, we will do probably another show or two or whatever before we end. But I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Hope you get an opportunity to spend it with your family. We know that, a lot of COVID cases did kind of surge after Thanksgiving. So use some caution, mask up where appropriate, all that good stuff. Pay attention. The vaccine is rolling out, and it'll be interesting to see whether our community and people within our community make the conscious decision to do the vaccine or not. It'll kind of be one of the stories of 2021, I'm sure. Yeah. But that's it. Just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a happy Christmas. The start of Kwanzaa will be right after Christmas, right? If I'm not mistaken.
And happy Hanukkah for our Jewish friends out there.
Right. I think Hanukkah probably just ended or maybe ending. It's an 8-day thing, which started, it might be over by now. But anyway, I want to make sure to remind you, go check out the website, mybcsn.net. Make sure you're following us on Twitter, Instagram, and find us on Facebook by just searching MyBCSN1, the number 1. You can also go and find the BCSN SportsWrap, our page. We have a page on Facebook. You can also do a search and find our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts. That's iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Just search BCSN SportsWrap, and when you go to listen, wherever you're listening to us at, on YouTube, the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to like and subscribe. Give us a rating if you can, even. Give us some positive comments. Let us know you're out there paying attention to us. And of course, follow us on Twitter personal pages. Drew is at BCSN Drew. I am at DRB365. And we appreciate you. One last shout out. Make sure you check out Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Doc, Charles Bishop, Mike Washington. Make sure to check those guys out. And
they're off next week, but they'll be back for the new year.
Okay, yeah. But all of their shows are available. Hey, if you downloaded the Jericho Broadcast Network's app, or even just go to our website, all of their shows are available there. So we appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Merry Christmas. And, well, we're not going to say Happy New Year yet, but to all a good night. Peace out.
Holla.
But my beat stay on hard.